Um, sorry. We are going to get started in just a little bit. We do have some housekeeping. So I think this is going to be recorded and then emailed out to those that registered so that if they're unable to join during this time, they'll be able to watch that webinar and then get their sketch that way also. So today I'm one of the presenters, Shannon Underwood, and my counterpart, Becky Moon. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about that, the 504 process and team approach to that. So Evelyn, I don't know if you want to move to that next slide yet. I don't know if I have access to that. Awesome. Okay. So some housekeeping things for logistics is keep your microphone muted during the presentation. We will prompt you when it's time to go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and that way I can then help moderate and look at those during the question and answer period. And then the session is recorded and it will be shared with everyone that registered, and the sketch credit is available. So there'll be like a couple short questions for that sketch. So there are some MSCA events coming up. So February 3rd is our Counselors at the Capitol. That is a really fun event. You get to run around cold Lansing in the bitter wind and visit all your senators and reps, and they love it. And you'd be shocked how little people go up there and do that, and how few people are in your senator and reps ear. And it is very important for us to represent our profession so that we and our students are not taken advantage of. Um, on February 23rd, we're doing a high school, middle school, and elementary level sharing. And so those are signed up to. Those are guided sharing sessions. So once you get in there, there's a systematic way that you kind of debrief with each other and share what you've been doing that was working well. You share resources, and you get a lot out of that. So it's kind of fun. So I'll let Rebecca go ahead and share her screen. But if we could, if everybody, if you don't mind, I'd love to see where everybody's from, like where you're working. If you don't mind getting in that group chat, blasting your name and then what school you're at, that would be kind of fun to see where everybody is coming from this morning.
And do you have a snow day today?
Yeah, lots of people have snow days today, so I'm wondering if that's why attendance is lower. Portland, all right. Morning,
And
Allison.
can,
Martha. Oh,
can
Gaylord's
you see my
snow
screen,
day.
Shannon?
Macomb, Heritage High, Saginaw, Davison.
Oh, my hometown, Davison.
Yeah. Livonia had a snow day. Those are few and far between. North Branch. All right. So you guys are home in your PJs with your coffee, living your best lives. I love it.
All right. Well, I think we had 100 people signed up, but we'll get started. So my name is Becky Moon. Like Shannon said, I am her partner. We are going to just kind of walk through what is working for us, and we are still, finding some tweaks along the way. But regarding the 504 initial determination process as a team, we know that 504s are a challenge across the board. And so we have been working on ways to share the responsibility. So we are counselors in a 6 through 8 middle school here in Portage, Michigan. We have about 700 students, and two of us counselors. We do not have like a district 504 coordinator necessarily. And so we came up with a team approach here. So today's purpose is really to share a specific example of how to share the load when it comes to 504 requests and determining eligibility. We're sharing what's working for our building currently. We know that some of you are from smaller districts, bigger districts, and so we'll kind of talk about that along the way too. But we do need to make a disclaimer. We are not lawyers. We are not going to offer legal advice. I know there's going to be a lot of questions that arise when we discuss some things that, you know, we may or may not be able to answer, and you would have to go to your district lawyer for some of that stuff. So just know that's our disclaimer. We don't know it all. So just to kind of get started, go ahead in the chat and type in why you chose this session. Can answer some of these questions in the chat, and we can read through it. I'm guessing, 504s are a big challenge in your building, so you can go ahead and answer those so we can just take a look. I know for us as a district, as you guys are typing those things, a lot of the times it's all on the counselor. And so we have a great team here, and we've been able to divide up our duties, and the number of 504s that have been coming in have been quite unmanageable.
Yeah, and I think like today's we're going to show you is like a real life school practice. It's not theory. And so I know like when Becky and I first started to working together about 7 years ago, the 504s were just pouring in the requests, and we just felt like it was taking up an extraordinary amount of time, and a lot of those requests weren't maybe the students that we would have targeted for child find. And we felt like that was taking away us as resources for all students. And we needed a better way to service all students. And so we really started looking at that. And we were joking around a little bit because I think we tried to pawn it off on the school psychs. Um, and the principals should be doing it. They're the building coordinators. And what we come to realize is that it's not, the 504s are different. They're not any one specific person's job unless you're a 504 coordinator and that they've hired you to do that. But it's taking away from anyone's job that would be assigned to do that, and away from how they service kids. So this is something we really looked at, and this is working for us for now, but we still tweak it all the time. So love to learn from you guys too.
So it sounds like, a lot of a similar, you guys want more clarity, looking for more information on 504s, fidelity, team approach, wanting that. So things change from year to year. So hopefully, you'll get some of that from this, and we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, we'll pause and have time for questions as we go through, and depending on how many people end up joining, we'll kind of take it as we go. So go ahead, Shannon. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Okay. So
Okay.
I started talking a little bit that we wanted this team approach. We were trying to pawn it off, and it wasn't going over very well. So upper admin was pushing back on us, but we kind of feel like this makes it so that it's not just one person doing it from start to finish. And when you look at the Office of Civil Rights and a lot of the complaints that they have, there's a huge liability for you as a counselor to be doing this from start to finish on your own without a team. You are not the end all to be all for all the reasoning that comes in with this and collecting all the data and all that good stuff. So, and you shouldn't be. So we wanted to look at this, more as a team approach. It also preserves your relationship with your students and your families, because there's so many times when we have to tell a parent no, and that's not what they want to hear. They want their baby to get help. And so you got mama bear over here, and it can create some tension. And so when you do this team approach, it takes that off of you personally telling somebody no. And it can be handed off to the principal as their role to tell the family, hey, this is what we have decided as a team. And that kind of takes you a little bit out of that center of attention for that. It promotes collaboration and accountability. and it keeps us efficient and consistent. So we all know what the system is. We all know how to do each other's parts. We all, make sure that we've got this system in place to keep us on time with this entire process. And so
And
we're going
one
to go over that today too. So.
Yeah, and one thing our lawyers did say when they presented to us as a district is, making sure that the team approach is a key component and it's an evaluate, and you do some evaluation. I think along the way it's been so much on one person and it's just like, yes, you get a 504, you get a 504, you get a 504. But evaluation and teamwork was key from our lawyer as well. All right, go ahead, Gina.
Yeah. So the way we do this is it starts out with the parent request. And usually that parent is coming in to talk to somebody, or they are emailing us, or, um, and then there also could be the teacher referral. So, and we have teaming in sixth grade, and that works really great because all four teachers have teamed together for this child and then done all the things that they know how to do before they refer. That's really nice. But we don't have that in place for seventh and eighth grade necessarily. So teachers can request that. And we also on Thursdays review data, and sometimes our team says, hey, this kid's failing lots of classes. And even though a teacher hasn't put them up for evaluation, we're seeing tons of behavior problems, poor reading and math scores. We're just looking at all the data and thinking, so a lot of times our team is the one doing the initial communication. But we've created a system in which after there has been a request that the parent is going to get an email kicked out to them from the principal. And in that email, there is a Google form for the parent to fill out. And in that form, and Becky will open that up, it's got the procedural safeguards. It's asking for all the parent input. Like, what is it that you want your child to get help in? What specifically are you seeing at home? What do you see as the main concerns at school? And so this gives us a lot of information in writing, because I would say a lot of times when you look through that Office of Civil Rights and they're looking at your process, that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And so they want to see, you can say, yeah, I interviewed the parent. I talked to him on the phone. Well, where's your notes? You want to capture that in some way. And so this questionnaire is kind of the um, when that time clock starts for us. So what we've tried to do is mirror that IEP process. Now, there is more flexibility in the 504 process. We don't have very strict rules, but there can be a consensus of best practice. And so if we look at that IEP process and say, okay, maybe that is kind of a best practice we can look at, we decided to make our target 30 to 45 days for completion. So once the parent returns this Google form to us and they're giving us consent for evaluation and all that, they have their procedural safeguards, that kind of starts our clock ticking at that point. Um,
Can you see my screen again?
and see. So dividing
All
the
right.
workload. Go ahead.
No, this is you.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, guys, we're unorganized. Hang on here. So dividing the workload. This is our team, and we meet once a week. And this would be like any student assistant team. Okay. So we've got a principal, an assistant principal, two counselors, one school psychologist, and yes, we were blessed with an MTSS coordinator. And from upper admin, we have a student success coordinator who was a former school counselor, and she comes and helps out too. So this essentially makes up the team. And usually there's a teacher in here too, and they're usually a department head. But that's essentially who makes up this team. And so what we've tried to do is take the evaluation process and give tasks to people. So it's not just one person doing all the work. Like our principal's favorite saying is, we're all going to do a little bit, so nobody has to do a lot. Um, which is a,
Yeah, and we know that some schools don't have all of this, and so, might have to get creative to recruit some people on a team. But this is who does what. The principal, like Shannon said, sends out the parent questionnaire first. We'll kind of show you how we divide that up, but counselors, we still do a lot of it. Preparing and summarizing the teacher input forms. The principal does send the teacher input forms out because they tend to answer them more when the principal sends it out rather than us. We set up the initial meeting and date and time, kind of manage the whole process. Our school psych does a file review and really helps us with interpreting those psych reports and assessments and data. Our MTSS coordinator gathers all the current assessment data. We use EduClimber and past relevant data. And then our student success coordinator, she's split between three middle schools, and she's great because she's an outside person who can come in and do observations and further consult with us. So we kind of meet to review, and we assign duties. We go through this. I'll kind of walk through this part. Then we make a team recommendation. So what I want to do is kind of walk through it with you. We are going to give you guys a case study here in a minute and have, after I kind of walk through what we do, and then it always brings up good conversation. And so on this document, so when we get a request, so it usually comes to Shannon or I, we will bring it to we have a meeting on Tuesday and Thursday, kind of have a core meeting, and we assign duties whenever, within, the week that it gets requested. And so our principal sends the procedural safeguards and that parent input form that kind of starts when we get it back, that's our kind of date stamp. We say, okay, so our student success coordinator, who's going to observe, who's going to do the file review, our principal is going to send the teacher input. We set the date for the determination and the 30 days due date. Once that, we kind of wait for the parent to fill that out. And that assigns our duties. And then we also have, so like when someone is requested, we get the student on this list because, as many of you said, the number of 504s is increasing and increasing, and it can get lost. So this team approach also helps us stay on track because sometimes we forget something or get overwhelmed, and this really helps us get all of the info into the spreadsheet and keep us on task. So each of these forms, the parent input form, I'll pull up a sample. So after the parent fills it in, it will look something like this. The reason for the referral, we have the timestamp, we get a lot of good information from the parent. We have their consent to do the evaluation. So that's what that looks like. And then our teacher input form, and you guys will have access to all these documents to make copies and use as you wish. The teacher input form, we really made that a little more robust over the last few years because a lot of times that is our best information. And I love Google Sheets and formatting and everything, so and color coding. But we have questions like what strengths, what academic challenges, and then to get it more specific, we kind of say, okay, in comparison to their peers, how many more accommodations are you doing for this student, for academic and for social emotional? So this really gives some good information. And like I said, our principal, we have the forms, we say, hey, all right, Jason, send this to these teachers, and he just has to send the email.
And the reason we have him send it is because when Becky and I send it people only like half respond, but if their boss sends it, boy, he gets all the responses. So we were like, what is this crazy magic? So um yeah, that's how he got that assigned. So
So this shows just very, and it's been very helpful too, because if teachers are already doing a lot of accommodations beyond what they do for, everybody else, and that's what we really try to focus on with the parents too, is what are the teachers doing and what do they need beyond their peers. So all of this is like the form comes through like this, and then I have to copy and paste it and transpose it. So there is some, this is kind of over the top, but it's very helpful visually when we bring it to the team. So like if you needed help with conditional formatting or things like that, I'd be happy to help you along the way. So that's the teacher input form. And then something our district provided to us, we have been asking for lots of support over the last 10 years I've been a counselor here, is this adverse impact form. And this is once we get all of the information. All right, so we've got the teacher input, we've got the file review going, we've got people observing, all right, and we say, okay, when that determination date, we kind of send each other reminders, let's come to the table and take a look and kind of fill this out together. So at the table, we're all looking at the teacher input, what I just showed you. We're looking at what the parents said. We're looking through the file review. Kristen, our student success person, is telling us about what she observed. And so at that student support team meeting, we're having these discussions, and then we go through this guidance for determining the extent of adverse impact on educational performance. So this does come from our special ed department. They did adopt it a little bit for us for 504s. We're still working on it a little bit and tweaking it, but we come with that data and then we kind of highlight and fill this out based on academic achievement, their screeners, their reading and math, their state, their report card. We kind of summarize that teacher input. With 504s, there's always that gray area, but as a team, we fill this out, and so that always helps. We have sabers that we use for the SEL screener data. We haven't really figured that part out, the behavior rating, but classroom observations, structured input on the SEL part, and then their behavior incidents and their attendance. This we're kind of determining as a team here, and then we taking a look at it. It's not always clear, do they have more boxes highlighted on this side, or do they have more boxes highlighted on this side? And then we, discuss as a team, really, all right, what do we think based on this? And it's always, some of us play devil's advocate, as a counselor. Shannon mentioned, sometimes when it's just on the counselor, it ruins that relationship with the parent and the student, but sometimes we're the kid's biggest advocate. So sometimes our whole team is saying no, and Shannon and I are saying yes. And so it really helps us work through those conversations. This is an evaluation determination tool that our district gave us to adopted from one of our other documents, but when you're really trying to determine if it substantially limits their learning, but we have found that this has been much more valuable in determining that substantial piece. So once we get all of that data, we put it on this spreadsheet. Sorry, my computer is being slow. And then we just pull up these things at our meeting, like I said. So what we thought, and what we did this at the MSCA conference back in November, is giving you a sample student packet. And so what did you just link in there? Okay, I will link in the spreadsheet. So
I just put in the whole PowerPoint for you guys. And so there's a lot of hyperlinks in there you can look through each of those examples.
All right, so what we thought little activity here on your snow day for you, and there's 22 of us. I'll probably put us in five. I can put us in five little groups. Um, let me paste this here. So that last spreadsheet that I just put in the chat is this one. And what you would do is click on each document. I have the parent input form. I have the file review here. We have the teacher input. The observations are within the file review, and our EduClimber report, which is the grades and everything, is in there. And then this is the adverse impact form that we used as a team. So what we'd like you guys to do, and we felt was pretty beneficial, is if you just go through that. This is from one of our students. It was Shannon's student. It was a very difficult one for our team to determine whether she qualified or not. We won't tell you if she did. Let's kind of see what you think based on this data and our little process here, and really taking a look at the adverse impact form. So when you go into a breakout group, you guys can discuss the data. So take a few minutes to look at each of these, and then go through the adverse impact form as a little team of 4 or 5, and see where you would put her on this impact form, and based on the parent input, teacher input, if you think your team would qualify. So any questions about the breakout rooms and what you're doing? And thank you, Allison. Yes, you can have, if you have any questions, if you have to leave, you can reach out to Shannon or I. All right, I'm going to try these breakout rooms. We'll do this for like 10 minutes. It may not be enough time, but let's see. I'm going to do, there's 20 of us. Don't all leave just because I'm putting you in breakout rooms. All right. Open all rooms. Let's see if it works. All right, that should have worked. Oh, they're all in their rooms. If you are just joining us, we just went into breakout rooms. It might let you join. Unassigned. Okay, I can assign you to a room and they'll tell you what to do. All right, we're going to wait till everybody comes back. All right, I think we started with 22. Might have lost two people along the way, but hopefully you had some fruitful conversations. I'm going to have Shannon take over. So go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, so I want to hear from you guys. So if you want to, you know, I don't know how this, if you want to raise your hand, I don't know how the participant works. If you want to say what your thoughts are on whether you think she would qualify or what kind of conclusions you came to, whatever it is that you want to share. So if anybody wants to unmute and go ahead and
Or you can type in the chat.
Well, I was in Shannon's group and we were just talking about a couple different things. And um, Shannon, as far as what I just mentioned, I reread the notes and mom does say she's taking medication. So she's medicated and still struggling this much. Now, I work in an elementary building, so it's a little different. Like teachers already provide, accommodations and interventions pretty much for all students. So in elementary, it may not be as critical, and I might talk to the parent about that, which I have done before. In middle school, um, yeah, I mean, it sounds like she's got a couple diagnoses, ADHD, anxiety, but I also saw learning disability in there, and then that made me think, why not an IEP? Did they test her for special ed and she didn't qualify, and that's why they want the 504? Like, to
yeah.
me, that would seem like that would be an IEP case.
So for a little more background on this student, very early on, kindergarten, first grade, she had some reading difficulties, did an outside diagnosis, and was told that she had dyslexia. Now that comes on a continuum. Lots of kids learn to cope with it or grow out of it. It just
Mhm.
means that at one point in time you had trouble learning
Right.
in reading. And so for her, we were not seeing any effects of dyslexia.
Mhm.
Um, as proof in her grades. She gets things done at a faster rate than most of her peers and more accurately. If you look at this adverse impact form that Becky has up, she was all in the green. Like when we look at the data, she is not presenting as somebody that would need a 504.
Mhm.
And one of mine was okay, but her executive functioning is still poor. She's still missing a lot of assignments. But what we found on further student interview and parent interview is that this child's a soccer player and spends most of her time in a car driving for club soccer and to
Mhm.
tournaments, and just honestly wasn't spending the time on doing the assignments. And if you um, gave her an hour to work on assignments, she could get quite a few of them done accurately and quickly. So we did not, in this case, qualify her for a 504. We felt like that was more of a choice than
Yeah.
it was something she couldn't do due to a disability. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of argument on both sides for this. So it was kind of a hotly debated topic. It was so hot that what we tabled it, literally tabled it for a couple of weeks and did a more observations and like I spoke with her and met with her quite a few times and then we brought that information back to the table because there was just lack of agreement in this case.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes they're tricky.
And we get lots of questions about, well, if they're not on their meds and the impact at home, they hold everything together at school and the impact at home. And so we really, again, as a team, um, we really work together to communicate that with the family. And this question, like when a student doesn't qualify, do you set up further checkpoint meetings? And yes, definitely those things help. We get a lot of requests of incoming sixth graders for 504s. And a lot of times we'll go through the evaluation process. They don't qualify and say, okay, we're going to meet again in February. and see how things are going. We're going to do these universal things and watch the student grow, because a lot of times, by seventh grade, they have the hang of middle school, or by February, sixth graders seem to have the hang of middle school. So we do set up checkpoints, and that really helps. When our team really feels the student doesn't qualify, and we touch base with the teachers again, our principal, depending on the situation and the relationship that we have with the parent, our principal will tend to call and discuss our findings ahead of the meeting and just say, this is kind of where our team is. We're not predetermining, because you got to be careful with that too, but this is what our team is seeing and recommending at this point, and we can discuss further at the meeting. So our principal does help with some of those conversations. And it is tough sometimes when a parent brings in an advocate and different things like that. But when we show our evaluation process and that adverse impact form to the parents, for some parents, that's a really big eye opener, because they're like, oh, okay, my kid is not standing out as much as I feel that they're standing out because of what they unload with me at home. And so I think a lot of times that conversation helps the parents kind of, especially our sixth grade parents, helps them like, okay, they are doing some stuff, and my kid is not standing out. So it really helps with those types of conversations in the 504 language with these documents and this evaluation process, being as thorough as possible. Any other questions like that came up, or yeah, how did we get? He's been super helpful. He's been advocating with us for like a 504 coordinator. It's technically, they are, liable and for teachers to implement the accommodations on 504s. And so we got lucky. And he values our time as counselors as well. So, and we asked him, and
Yeah, it didn't start out this way. Yeah, there was,
no,
I think there was just a lot of highlighting, like, hey, we should be in classrooms right now teaching lessons. And it does, if there's 700 kids for Becky and I, that's a full week and a day or two for us in classrooms to get a school-wide lesson. And it was really impinging on what we're able to do and service our students. And so we just started highlighting some fun facts for them, and
well, and
just
in our students, yeah, sorry,
the
in our
preserve
student support teams.
relationship and needing his influence and authority really was the the clitcher. I think he was like, I was like, we have to have your influence and your authority in this, and your expertise, or it's just not successful.
Yeah, and we had a lot of, tough parents. And it's like, okay, Jason, you have to take this conversation, because, it is hurting the relationship. So I think you got to keep pushing. Yes, you will receive links and copies of all of this.
Yeah.
Nicole will make sure you get there. Over, just put that in there, Nicole. Yep. Any other thoughts or questions before we move on?
I actually do have another question. It came up in our group, and I feel like I feel like a lot of us are dealing with this. What about, so kid isn't coming to school, attendance issue, turns out they have anxiety and they want a 504, I think more because they don't want the attendance to work against them. So the evaluation process is tough because they're not there for you to be able to even see what accommodations are effective for them or what they're needing. So I was curious what you guys have found
So
with this, like your experience with it.
we actually have had this in both ways. In one way, we had a student that was hospitalized for months out of state, then had a gradual reentry program and a coordinator that met with us, and it was all documented and prescribed by the facility, the doctors, the counselors. We had a lot of documentation to support that this child was going to be doing this program. We had one last year where the parent kept asking for 504s. And I said, wow, I mean, they're just not coming to school. I mean, this kid missed 100 days. I was like, how are we going to support? Can't play What do you want us to do when they've missed 100 days? Anyway, so, but when I got reached out to their counselor, the counselor wrote a letter to the school and said that they recommended that the child be at school as much as possible, and that no one was prescribing the child to be off of school. And that was the clincher. So if this child is suicidal, we move them right to a safety plan. And that safety plan is pretty robust. And that is reviewed weekly or biweekly, as long as that student needs that. But we never move that child into a 504 because it was, just missing school wasn't part of that. Yeah. I mean, maybe that child would have qualified eventually for a 504, but it was very difficult when the parents were just allowing them to stay home. And that is a parental choice. And that does not mean that they automatically get a 504. And that's how we did it. But I mean, I would always consult with your school's lawyers, and double check in those kinds of cases because everybody interprets the law just a little bit differently. But that's the decision, for reference of what we did in those two very different cases. That one child did get one. Eventually, she was moved to an IEP. She was a lot more severe, but yeah, the other child did not.
And, in some cases, I think that evaluation piece, when we explain it to parents, it is an evaluation. And if they keep pushing to do it, okay, you can do it. And there's been times where we've had to say, not necessarily attendance, but say, we don't have enough data to make a determination right now. So here is what we can do. Put in that, anxiety plan or that safety plan. We did get consulted on be careful in using the word plan, but supports. If you're not giving them a 504 plan, don't use the word plan, but put in some supports and then collect that data and sharing with the family, like this is what we can do next for you. Not just give that 504 as protection. So I don't know if that helps.
Becky, can you real quick elaborate on why you were advised not to call something else a plan? Because as you were talking, I was writing down like a lot of times we won't do a 504 plan, but we'll create like a safety plan or a behavior plan or attendance plan. And now I hear you saying that you're advised not to use the word plan in there. And we call it that all the time.
Yeah, that I mean that was what my principal said. And if you do, like, just saying that you're collecting that data for, I don't think it's, I don't know, my principal was preferring that we don't use that, but we do use safety, like, I mean, safety plan, behavior plan, I feel like those are different. I'm just referring to more of like
Back in the
something
day,
you would put in a 504.
they used
Oh,
to
okay.
get a general education plan back in the day. So if they didn't think it was 504 noteworthy, and I was guilty of this back in the day, we would do a general education plan and just kind of list out what specifically this child might need in that general education setting. And what Becky's referring to is they're like, please don't do that. Don't do that. So
Okay, I thought you meant your lawyer advised you guys not to use the word plan, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why?
No,
Okay, thanks for clarifying
no.
that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, I'm sure more questions. We'll have another, we're kind of getting close to the time, but the rest of this, we have on the slides just kind of like the meeting agenda. It's been helpful when we have an agenda and we post it both for the teachers in our meetings and the parents to just kind of keep some boundaries on conversations and protect people's time. We kind of review all the data, go through the adverse impact form. And it does, I know for some of our families too, like, wow, you did take this seriously. You really dived into it. And I see my child different, can really see what my child is doing during the school day. So go ahead, and Shannon, I don't know if there's more. I know we have about 4 minutes left, so I don't know.
kind of our system management, like we make sure that our paperwork is done. We try to do it yearly, unless I have a student that has a physical ailment and we don't need, we just sign off on it. We do it every 3 years because it doesn't really change. But you know, principals make a staff meeting time at the beginning of each year to review 504 plans. We're just trying to do best practices within our system management. And as counselors, we're kind of, I call us program managers. We're just making sure that the system is rolling. But you know, having other people part of that team is important. I started out my career in a very, very tiny rural school district called Mendon. And there's one counselor and one principal and 13 teachers in that building. And what we did to create that team process was, you know, we included a couple teachers, and every 9 weeks we rotated who was on that team. And it seemed to work pretty good. But anyway, it's all about documentation and having the right language used and not saying things like, well, we think or we discussed without having evidence, and being able to explain your rationale. And I think those things kind of cover you. They're good for the students and they're good for you as part of that team. So just sharing that responsibility is important, even if it's in some way, you know, so that you're not the only one accountable for this. So questions were, how do you ask staff to document accommodations they are providing? Becky, you're good at this. Let you take that one.
Well, we've kind of gone back and forth with that. Right now, I would say it's with that teacher input form, doing that yearly, and then we have a 504 quarterly report that they kind of document. We did, as a district, talk about having them fill out a weekly form about their accommodations, and the IEPs currently do that. We do not currently do that with 504s, and we do not have a district coordinator telling us to do so. So right now, it's just the quarterly reports and the teacher input forms.
Yeah, the quarterly reports, just the teacher signing a piece of paper saying, yes, I'm aware these kids have a 504 and what their accommodations are. But they are personally liable to uphold those and to do those. So, but tracking.
So this is
crazy.
So that's a big question. Yes, we can upload that somewhere.
Most of your Power School or Skyward, your student record systems will have that in their system automatically. That's sent out by your admin. And so that's something your district possibly might already be doing, and you just don't know that. But yes, I don't know
but
about
that is on our agenda to like get a little better at those quarterly reports. Any other questions? Here's our emails. Feel free to reach out to us. This recording and our slide deck is supposed to be emailed to you. So make sure, and I can add the quarterly report link onto the slide deck. But that's all we have for you today.
All right.
Hopefully you got something out of it.